the factory that turns metal into luxury. So you want to own a Rolex factory. Imagine owning a manufacturing facility where a single watch can sell for thousands, tens of thousands, or even far more depending on the model and market. Inside the factory, tiny mechanical components are machined with extraordinary precision. Metal cases are shaped and polished. Bracelets are assembled. Sapphire crystals are cut and finished. Dials receive microscopic details, and mechanical movements containing hundreds of individual components are carefully assembled and tested. There are no giant production lines producing millions of identical products every year. Instead, the factory is built around something completely different: precision, consistency, craftsmanship, and scarcity. That makes luxury watch manufacturing economically fascinating, because unlike a mass-market product, the goal isn't simply to produce as many watches as possible. The goal is to produce a highly valuable product while protecting the quality and reputation that allows customers to pay a premium. A Rolex-style factory isn't trying to win the volume game. It's trying to win the value per unit game, and that's where the economics become very different from a Toyota or Tesla factory. Which Rolex factory are you buying? First, let's imagine we're building a fully integrated luxury watch manufacturing operation similar in scope to a major Swiss luxury watchmaker. The factory doesn't simply assemble finished watches. It manufactures many of the critical components: cases, bracelets, dials, movement components, and other precision parts. This requires an enormous range of specialized equipment: CNC machines, precision lathes, grinding systems, polishing equipment, laser systems, testing machines, clean assembly rooms, quality control laboratories, and highly trained watchmakers. Some operations can be automated. Others still depend heavily on skilled human workers. That combination is important, because luxury watchmaking is not about replacing every person with a robot. It's about using technology where it improves consistency while preserving the craftsmanship that customers expect. You're not building a factory designed to make the cheapest watch possible. You're building a factory designed to make an extremely precise object that customers believe is worth paying a premium for. The first $1 billion. Now imagine establishing a large-scale, vertically integrated luxury watch manufacturing operation requires approximately $1 billion in total investment. The actual amount could vary substantially depending on land, machinery, research facilities, production capacity, vertical integration, and the level of automation. But $1 billion gives us a useful model. The money goes into precision machining equipment, production buildings, research and development facilities, metallurgy, testing laboratories, assembly workshops, security, inventory, specialized tooling, and highly controlled production environments. But there is another major cost: time. A luxury watch factory can't simply open its doors and immediately operate at full efficiency. Employees need training, processes need refinement, machines need calibration, products need testing, and production systems need to be validated. In luxury manufacturing, the factory isn't just buying equipment. It's buying years of accumulated precision, from raw metal to a luxury watch. Now the manufacturing process begins. Metal enters the factory. Depending on the watch, this could include stainless steel, precious metals, or other specialized materials. The case begins as a block or piece of material. Precision machines cut it into shape. Tiny openings are created. Edges are refined. Surfaces are finished. Then comes polishing. Some surfaces are brushed. Others are polished to a mirror-like finish. The bracelet is manufactured and finished separately. The dial receives its own production process. Hands are produced at microscopic tolerances. And then there's the movement. Hundreds of tiny components have to work together. Gears, springs, jewels, bridges, rotors, and other precision parts. Once assembled, the movement has to be carefully adjusted and tested. A luxury mechanical watch isn't simply assembled, it's tuned. Every tiny component has to work with the others with extraordinary consistency. The movement cost problem. Now we reach one of the most important parts of the economics, the movement. In a mechanical watch, the movement is essentially the engine. But unlike a car engine, it fits inside something that can sit on your wrist. It contains hundreds of miniature components. And producing those components requires extremely precise manufacturing. A single tiny component can require specialized machinery, quality inspection, surface finishing, and careful assembly. Imagine the factory spends hundreds of millions of dollars developing and manufacturing its movements, including machinery, engineering, testing, and skilled labor. That investment is spread across the watches produced over many years. This creates an important economic advantage. Once the movement design and manufacturing system are established, every additional watch can benefit from that investment. The expensive part isn't always the material inside the watch. It's the precision required to turn hundreds of tiny parts into a reliable mechanical system. The material cost problem. Now, let's talk about materials. A luxury watch may contain steel, gold, platinum, ceramic, sapphire crystal, precious stones, and other specialized materials. Some of these materials can be extremely expensive. Imagine a precious metal watch uses several $1,000s worth of raw material. If gold prices rise sharply, production costs increase. But here's where luxury economics become different. A luxury brand may have much more pricing power than a commodity manufacturer. A $500 increase in material cost doesn't necessarily mean the watch's selling price has to increase by exactly $500. The brand may be able to absorb some of the increase, or adjust pricing, or change product mix. When you're selling a commodity, customers usually care about the material price. When you're selling luxury, customers are also paying for craftsmanship, design, reputation, heritage, and exclusivity. That creates much greater pricing power. The cost inside every watch. Now let's build a simplified economic model. Imagine our factory produces 500,000 luxury watches per year. Suppose the average wholesale revenue received by the manufacturer is approximately $8,000 per watch. That would generate roughly $4 billion in annual manufacturing revenue. But this doesn't mean the factory earns $8,000 on every watch. Materials cost money. Skilled labor costs money. Machinery costs money. Research and development costs money. Quality control costs money. Packaging costs money. Distribution costs money. And maintaining an enormous luxury manufacturing operation costs money. Suppose the average total manufacturing and operating cost comes to approximately $4,500 per watch. That leaves around $3,500 per watch before additional corporate expenses, taxes, financing, and other costs. At 500,000 watches, that represents a potentially enormous operating contribution. But there is a catch. The volume problem. Luxury watchmaking cannot simply operate like a smartphone factory. If you double production, you don't necessarily double the value of the brand. In fact, producing too many watches could create a problem. Luxury depends partly on scarcity. If the product becomes too common, the perception of exclusivity can weaken. That means the factory has an unusual economic constraint. It wants high utilization, but it doesn't necessarily want unlimited volume. In most factories, selling more units is almost always good. In luxury manufacturing, producing too much can eventually damage the very thing that makes the product valuable. That is one of the strangest economics in the entire manufacturing world. The automation advantage. That doesn't mean luxury factories avoid automation. Quite the opposite. Modern precision manufacturing uses advanced machinery to create components with extremely tight tolerances. CNC machines can manufacture tiny components repeatedly. Laser equipment can perform precise operations. Automated inspection systems can identify microscopic defects. Computer-controlled equipment can measure components far more precisely than the human eye. But the goal isn't necessarily full automation. The goal is precision. The best luxury factory doesn't ask, How can we eliminate every worker? It asks which parts of the process should be automated and which parts become more valuable because of human skill. That distinction can be worth millions. The quality control problem. Now imagine producing 500,000 watches. A tiny defect rate can still mean thousands of affected products. And luxury customers have extremely high expectations. The finish needs to be consistent. The movement needs to operate correctly. The dial needs to be aligned. The hands need to function properly. The bracelet needs to feel precise, and the watch needs to perform reliably. That means quality control happens throughout production. Components are inspected, movements are tested, cases are measured, finished watches are checked, and products that don't meet the required standard can be rejected or reworked. In luxury manufacturing, quality control isn't an extra department. It's part of the product itself. A tiny flaw that would be ignored on a cheap product can become unacceptable on a luxury watch. The brand premium. Now we reach the biggest difference between a Rolex-style factory and almost every other factory we've discussed: the brand. A mechanical watch may contain hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars worth of materials and manufacturing, but the final selling price can be many times higher. Why? Because customers aren't simply buying metal and gears, they're buying design, heritage, reputation, craftsmanship, status, exclusivity, and trust. This creates something extremely valuable: pricing power. The most profitable component inside a luxury watch may not be the movement. It may be the brand attached to the dial. And that's why luxury manufacturing economics are so different from commodity manufacturing. The retail price problem. Now imagine a watch eventually reaches a retail price of $15,000. That doesn't mean the manufacturer receives $15,000. There can be distributors, retailers, taxes, marketing, logistics, and other costs between the factory and the final customer. Suppose the manufacturer receives an average of $8,000. The difference between retail price and factory revenue is not simply profit. The entire distribution chain has to be paid. This is why looking at a watch's retail price alone can create a completely misleading picture of factory profitability. A $15,000 watch doesn't mean the factory has $15,000 of revenue. And $8,000 of factory revenue doesn't mean $8,000 of profit. The economics are much more complicated. The inventory problem. Luxury watches are expensive inventory. Imagine the factory has 50,000 finished watches waiting for distribution. At an average manufacturing value of $8,000, that's potentially $400 million tied up in finished products. That is enormous. And inventory creates another problem. Models change. Customer preferences change. Production schedules change. And some watches may sell faster than others. This makes inventory management extremely important. In luxury manufacturing, every unsold watch represents thousands of dollars sitting on a shelf instead of generating cash. The goal isn't simply to produce watches, it's to produce the right watches in the right quantities. The scarcity advantage. Now here's where the business becomes unusual. Scarcity can increase desirability. If customers believe a watch is difficult to obtain, demand can remain strong even when production is relatively limited. That creates a powerful economic advantage. The manufacturer doesn't necessarily need to flood the market. It can maintain production discipline, protect pricing, and preserve exclusivity. For a luxury factory, scarcity isn't always a production problem. Sometimes scarcity is part of the business model. That's why maximizing output isn't necessarily the same thing as maximizing profit. The distribution problem. Luxury watches don't simply leave the factory and go directly to customers. They move through carefully controlled distribution networks, authorized dealers, boutiques, regional distribution centers, and sometimes direct sales channels. The manufacturer has to protect the brand throughout that process. Pricing, presentation, customer experience, inventory, and authenticity all matter. If discounting becomes too aggressive, the perceived value of the brand can weaken. A luxury manufacturer isn't only managing a product. It's managing the entire environment in which that product is sold. The counterfeit and grey market problem. Luxury watches have another unusual risk: counterfeiting. A counterfeit product can damage customer trust, and unauthorized grey market sales can create pricing inconsistencies. If customers see the same watch being heavily discounted elsewhere, the official retail price can become harder to defend. That means the manufacturer needs strong authentication, serial tracking, distribution controls, and careful channel management. When your product's value depends heavily on trust, protecting authenticity becomes an economic necessity. The technology problem: mechanical watchmaking may be centuries old, but modern luxury manufacturers still need advanced technology, precision machining, computer-controlled production, new materials, advanced testing, and increasingly sophisticated manufacturing systems. The challenge is balancing tradition with technology. Too little technology can make production inefficient. Too much automation can remove some of the craftsmanship customers associate with luxury. The goal isn't to choose between tradition and technology. It's to use technology to make traditional craftsmanship more precise. The ownership traps. The first trap is assuming a high retail price means enormous factory profit. The second is underestimating the cost of skilled labor. The third is producing too many watches. The fourth is allowing quality to decline. The fifth is carrying too much inventory. The sixth is damaging the brand through excessive discounting. The seventh is becoming dependent on a small number of distribution channels. The eighth is failing to invest in precision manufacturing. The ninth is underestimating counterfeit and grey market risks. And the final trap is thinking luxury can be manufactured like a commodity. You can't simply build more machines and assume customers will automatically value the product more. In luxury, perception is part of the economics. The factory verdict. So what separates a profitable Rolex-style factory from a billion-dollar manufacturing mistake? Precision, quality, pricing power, controlled production, skilled workers, efficient manufacturing, strong distribution, and an extremely valuable brand. The smart owner doesn't simply ask, "How many watches can we produce?" They ask, "How much does each watch cost? How much are customers willing to pay? How much production can the market absorb without weakening exclusivity? How much inventory should we hold? How much should be automated? And how much of the final price is actually captured by the manufacturer?" Those questions determine whether the factory creates exceptional returns. From the outside, a Rolex-style factory looks like a place where metal, gears, and glass become luxury watches. The real economics. But economically, it's doing something much more interesting. It's turning precision into value. A traditional factory wants to produce as cheaply as possible. A luxury watch factory wants to produce efficiently. But it also has to protect the perception that the finished product is special. That's why the economics aren't based purely on production volume. The factory needs skilled workers, highly precise equipment, strict quality control, expensive materials, careful inventory management, and most importantly, a brand capable of commanding a premium. If the factory produces 500,000 watches efficiently and customers continue to value them, the economics can be extremely attractive. Every dollar saved in manufacturing can improve margins. Every improvement in precision can reduce defects. Every increase in productivity can increase output without proportionally increasing costs. But there is a limit. Produce too many watches and scarcity can weaken. Cut prices too aggressively and exclusivity can suffer. Reduce quality and trust can disappear. And lose control of distribution, and the brand's pricing power can weaken. A luxury watch factory doesn't make money simply because the watch is expensive. It makes money because the factory can produce something customers perceive as significantly more valuable than the cost of making it. That's the real game. Precision matters. Craftsmanship matters, scarcity matters, brand power matters, and pricing power matters. So, is owning a Rolex-style factory a license to print money? Not exactly. It's a massive investment in manufacturing capability and brand economics. If the factory maintains exceptional quality, controls production, protects exclusivity, and benefits from strong pricing power, the returns can be extraordinary. But if production expands too aggressively, quality falls, inventory builds, or the brand loses its premium position, the economics can change very quickly. The most dangerous luxury watch factory isn't the one that can't produce enough watches. It's the one that produces too many, and slowly destroys the reason customers were willing to pay so much for them. That is the real economics of owning a Rolex-style factory.